I'm going to give you the quick and dirty version of of how to make pitch decks to raise money. So to begin with, I want to tell you why you should listen to me because I have lots of opinions. My wife thinks I have too many opinions, but why you should listen to me about pitch decks at all. I've helped people raise more than 2 billion. I think we're approaching 3 billion now from folks like A16Z, AI Fund, 8VC, etc. Most of my work is with individual startups. We also have gotten some money actually from the sovereign wealth, one of the sovereign wealth funds of KSA as well. And so my background is in consulting. I also worked at a venture studio called Saturn V. And the combination of those two things created my company now, which is Optio, where we are effectively consultants for early stage venture building. But fundamentally, all I do is make pitch decks. I just make slides. That's all I do. It's very fun. The reason I got there, if you'll pardon a quick personal aside, is that my dad is the least articulate businessman you've ever met in your life. He's actually a cowboy, but he's very good at building businesses and really bad at talking. My mom is a speech teacher who doesn't know anything about building companies, but knows a lot about building great presentations. And that kind of resulted in me, somebody who doesn't know anything about business or talking. Fundamentally, y'all's problem is that the people you're talking to are incredibly busy. This is for VCs, but GPs are also really busy as well. So I'm going to skip through some of the jokes here. But fundamentally, the average VC just spends about 12 seconds looking at each slide. For you, if you're looking for a rich guy to invest, they'll probably spend a little bit more time, but not very much time looking at each of these slides. And so we're going to talk about how to win in just 12 seconds. And I've got 5 simple rules. Be simple, not precise. Show, don't tell. Say what you actually mean. Tell a story. And finally, be true to yourself. And we'll talk through each of these briefly, okay? So first, I want you to be simple, not precise. So a second ago, I actually lied to you. People don't spend 12 seconds looking at each slide. They spend 11.6 seconds repeating. That's a distinction without a difference, right? But a lot of times I see people building the really complicated, busy slide that tells about the 11.6 repeating seconds instead of saying what matters, which is just they don't spend much time looking. And I know what you're doing, what y'all are doing, building these companies is very complicated, right? But it's not as complicated as general relativity. And there's this amazing book called General Relativity for Babies that actually explains general relativity in simple pictures with small words. And I love this book. I'm obsessed with it because it does such a good job communicating a complex idea visually and linguistically in really simple words. So I want to challenge you. If somebody can explain general relativity to babies, and you should buy this book because it's amazing, I think you can probably explain a venture studio to a distracted, family office guy, right? Okay, this is a bad slide and a slide I see all the time. A better example for y'all might be like performance of venture studios versus performance of like venture as an asset class or something. This is a slide that's just way too complicated. There are 5 bullet points on here. And in the history of the world, no one has ever read the 5th bullet point of a pitch deck slide. This is a much better version of the same slide. What we did is we took that complex idea, right? And we boiled it down to the one thing that matters, which is the 43% improvement over the placebo group. I did all kinds of tricks with the graph, right? It doesn't start at 0, it starts at 14. I edited this so that it's just a simple sentence, and then somehow the formatting got messed up here. But you can see that this is just dramatically simpler as a slide. And it actually only talks about the thing that really matters, which is the improvement over the placebo group. This is a terrible slide. This is from Theranos. If Theranos had hired me to make their pitch decks, they would have committed fraud for much longer and made a lot more money because this is an absolutely garbage slide. It's a lot of bullet points and it's very technical, right? This is how I recreated it to be incredibly simple and to be glanceable. Now, this is also shows you how you can structure a slide so that it works in 12 seconds and works in 30 minutes, okay? So here, you can't really glance at this slide because it says things like sample size. That doesn't tell me anything interesting. If I just glance at it, I read the letters and the words in blue. I don't read the words in black, right? Here, when you just glance at it, you see single drop of blood. That's sample size, but it's communicated really simply. But then I also have the technical language down there, right? So, for instance, you might say, huge opportunities or government partnerships. And then underneath government partnerships in smaller language, you can talk about who you're partnering with, right? Specifically. But that way, you get the simple idea, we're connected, across very quickly. And you have the details about how you're connected also there, okay? Is a great slide from Cora. Really simple. I mean, just look how simple this is. They're just saying they're spending money on launch, infrastructure, talent, and engineering. Talent and engineering are presumably the same thing too, right? It's just like very simple buckets, but it's communicating it in a very simple way. The goal of a pitch deck is to get the meeting, not to close the deal. And so what you want to do is just get that meeting rather than go all the way to convincing them to give you money. This is another great slide. Whatever we're doing is not as complicated as building airplanes or electric airplanes that also have eVTOL. But this is an incredibly simple slide that communicates a lot of value, right? Okay, that's how to be simple, not precise. That's the longest one. Now I'm going to tell you about how to show things instead of telling things. I think this is a bad slide. And I think this is a bad slide because it doesn't tell you anything about this company. I have no idea what this company does, right? Their tagline is work happier, but I still don't know anything about it. Instead, on your cover slide even, I think there are opportunities to explain what you do. Boom, I already know so much more about what you do versus a slide that just has a logo and a name, right? This is a much better cover slide. This is for Sonder. I think I did their series C or E, I forget which one, but I didn't do this deck in particular. But what I really like about this deck is that they are immediately showing what they're doing. You can see that it's beautiful, big city real estate with a real vibe to it. Okay. I immediately kind of get what they're doing. And then they have a tagline, building the future of hospitality, that says even more. Makes a lot of sense. This is a terrible slide. This is a slide I got from a client. I redacted it and changed it so much that you can never figure out what the company is. But this slide, there are kind of a couple problems with it. But one is just that there's a lot of language here that doesn't actually, that feels, it feels like it's making a very complicated argument rather than showing you something that's new and that's true. So for instance, this company is only possible because of two different rule changes in how government entities interpret laws. I mean, that's super abstract. But what we did when we recreated this slide is we went and found the actual PDFs and showed that the PDFs exist, and then gave it a simple headline. Recent regulatory rule changes made this possible. So now this feels like something I need to ask my lawyer about, whether it's true or not. This feels like a fact. And a fact like that is really compelling. Again, to kind of make it much more, to make it more relevant to you right now, I would say that I would go and find examples of how much money and the documents that show how excited KSA is for the AI future, to show KSA is committed to spending $500 million or $500 billion or whatever on AI in the next 20 years. That is a massive tailwind. You can just show that instead of saying it's going to be a big thing. You can just show a document and a number, and that's really different. This is a terrible team slide. It just says some things about the people instead of actually showing the people, right? This is a too simple of a team slide for what you're doing. You need some bullet points. This team slides are the only place where I say you can use bullet points. But here you actually want some more detail for what y'all are doing. But this is an incredibly simple slide. I know I'm going to go look these people up. It doesn't hurt that Casey Means has been a guest on, I think two of these guys have been guests on Joe Rogan. So that doesn't hurt. These are famous people that people in startup world will know. But what you want to do is just show them enough information that it gets people really excited about who this team is. Okay. Okay. That's number 2. Here's number 3. And this is the last meaty one before we get into the really quick last 2. And that is, I want you to actually say what you mean on every slide. And if you only do one thing to your pitch decks, guys, this is the thing I would do. Think about old school newspapers that say in a few simple words the point of the entire article. Hindenburg explodes 100 dead. You don't need to read the rest of the article to know what the rest of the article is about and what you'll learn. It has the most interesting stuff right there. So I think every slide needs three different pieces. I think it needs a signpost, uh, team, traction, market, regulatory tailwinds, partnerships, whatever. It needs a headline, and that headline is the argument that you're making on the slide, because every slide is an argument. If you're not sure what the argument is on a slide, it's a bad slide, you should toss it, because every slide is an argument and should be pushing an idea forward really clearly. It's the thesis statement, the thing that you want them to believe after they read the slide. And the rest of the deck, sorry, the rest of the slide is just supporting evidence for the headline, right? It's just a reason to believe, it's evidence to believe the claim that you made in the headline. A lot of times what I see people do is just have a signpost and not have a headline, and not really have supporting evidence that actually connects that clearly to that headline or to that signpost. This is a terrible slide from Uber's original pitch deck, okay? First off, it has bullet points. At least it has a picture, but the picture doesn't actually move the ball forward. It's decoration, not communication. It doesn't actually tell you anything that's interesting. Here's how I recreated this slide, because you don't know what this slide is, right? Is it about the status quo? Is it the problem slide? Is it the competition slide? I don't know what it is. Here's how we recreated it. The problem is that cabs suck. There's no two-way communication. They're gross. They're bad for the environment. There's lots of dead time. And I still worked a photo in here, but this photo has somebody looking disgusted and disgruntled rather than just have a picture of a cab. It's actually moving the ball forward. This slide also has more points to it, has more information than this slide. Because on this slide, it doesn't say that cabs are gross. This slide, it does, right? And so that's an example of how you can communicate a lot of ideas quite quickly. There's another example from a client. They weren't raising any money because they were talking about a rocket engine that was 5% more efficient, okay? We converted that to say we could 4.5x every rocket's payload, because it turns out that because 99% of the weight of a rocket at takeoff is rocket fuel, if you can make it 5% more efficient, you can 4.5x a payload, right? And so again, that's having a really clear headline. Here it just says solution, the Stellos hybrid rocket engine. That just tells you the topic. It's not making an argument. This is making an argument. And it's making an argument in terms of economics that actually makes sense to people. Now, this is a bad slide, not because they're not making an argument, we make the world more productive, but because they're using an absolute word salad of buzzwords. It's really easy to slip into buzzwords when you're talking about complicated business stuff. I used to be a business strategy consultant, right? I can talk about optimizing with the best of them. But the problem is that as soon as you have a bunch of multi-syllabic words, people's brain stops working. And so you just want to say things incredibly simply, because buzzwords are usually camouflage for lazy thinking, whereas simple language often reveals a much deeper understanding of what you're talking about and is much, much more compelling. This is a much better version. Entrepreneurs can't get credit cards. Incredibly simple language, and then they actually they just took some ugly photos of rejections, but they're using extremely simple language that communicates really big ideas. Okay. We're approaching the end here. I want you to think about how you can tell a story with your pitch deck. Most of the time, when people, like when I said a second ago, 5 minutes ago, hey guys, I'm going to pull up some slides. Your heart probably sank a little bit because you thought it's going to be boring now. You probably checked your phone or like flipped over to Slack, because when you pull up slides, you're allowed to be really boring. When people think PowerPoint, they think this moment. Boredom in a conference room with a boring guy. Instead of conference rooms, I want you to think about campfires. At campfires, it's not socially acceptable to be boring. You have to be interesting. Or dinner parties, right? The end of a really great dinner with friends. When people say, oh, I've got a story to tell you. You get excited, you lean in, because humans hate PowerPoints, but they love stories. And every story has a few of the same components. It has a hero, it has conflict, and it has a resolution. This is not a story. Howdy, one customer kind of likes it and pays us. I went to Stanford. We have better features and lower prices. Please give me money. Not a story. If you said that on a campfire, your friends would be like, bro, stop. You're being really annoying. This is a story. My last startup failed for a stupid reason. We couldn't get SOC 2 certification quickly. When I told my friends, a lot of them had the same problem. And it turns out there are a lot of B2B SaaS businesses that need SOC 2. So we got a plucky band of engineers together and automated the whole process. We already have a happy pilot customer paying us $10,000 a month. So now we're on a mission to save the other companies that also need this join the fight. That's a story. Last point. This is the fastest. I want you to be true to yourself. The average LP investment in a fund lasts longer than the average American marriage. So if somebody gets married and gets an LP check on the same day, chances are they're more likely to deal with that LP than the other person they just married. That's why you should not lie. Don't mislead anybody because you're going to be dealing with that person for a really long time. But in addition to not lying, I also want you to be your weird self. Okay. This is the actual slide from Bored Ape Yacht Club. It makes me incredibly uncomfortable because they don't even say who they are. But for Web3 guys, this is a great team slide. I think it's crazy, but it works for Web3 type things. So be your weird self. This is Reddit's original pitch deck way back in the day. This is hilarious. secretplanetreddit.com. That is a beautiful, unhinged pitch deck. But if an investor doesn't like this kind of weirdness, then they're not right for Reddit. And so they shouldn't invest. So I want you to be true to yourself, even as you're fundraising. So to summarize, here are my 5 simple rules to make pitch decks that raise money. And all of these apply to y'all as you're building this deck. Okay, I know we've got 15 seconds, and so I'll wrap it up there.